Hatchet II, Hatchet III. That's right, folks. We've taken a look at the first two entries in the Victor Crowley saga about this behemoth of a man who kills anybody who comes across this swamp in Louisiana. Now, the first film was a great homage, parody, send-off, whatever you want to call it, to the old slasher flicks of the 70s and the 80s. Adam Green put together a hilarious, bloody massacre that was just phenomenal, and Victor Crowley came out as a new horror great to stand alongside Jason and Freddy and Michael and all the rest of them. Then in Hatchet 2, that's when we actually got the backstory. So the first film was just there to serve as like the parody or the homage of the old slasher flicks. The second film was the actual legitimate slasher flick at that point there. We already got all the jokes out of the way. Now we're trying to get a little bit more serious. We got a little bit of a bigger and high profile cast. Again, we added on Danielle Harris, Tom Holland, Tony Todd, amongst others joined in the second film. So where can we go with part 3? If you remember, part 2 ended off with Marybeth in a fight with Victor Crowley, kind of similar to the end of the first film, but this time it was ending more on her side. Because remember, at the end of the first film, Victor Crowley had Marybeth within his grasp. He had just ripped off the arm of Ben, and things that looked too good for our heroes. But at the end of the second film, tables have turned, and finally, Marybeth has the upper hand on Victor Crowley. But we cut right in the middle of that, only to pick right back up. Again, I love it so much that that's the continuity that the first 3 films have, that the second picks up immediately after the end of the first one, and the third picks up immediately after the end of the second film. But Marybeth finally takes it to Victor Crowley and blows his damn head off, and all should be saved at that point. All should be well. But as we all know how it is with these slashers, to where they're supernatural and not just a guy in a mask, Victor Crowley comes back again, and Marybeth has to put him down again, this time cutting the man completely in half with a chainsaw and leaving him for dead. She ends up back in New Orleans trying to tell her story to anybody she can to figure out what the hell is going on and put an end to the rest of the Victor Crowley saga. Now, from the jump, I love the fact that because everything's kind of separated. Like Victor Crowley obviously is our villain again in this film. He's obviously going to kill a lot of people in this movie again, just like he did in the first 2 entries. But what's kind of interesting with this one is that the script doesn't immediately go there. And Adam Green is back in writing capacity, but he actually didn't direct Hatchet 3. That handed off to B.J. McDonald, who, if I remember correctly, was a camera operator on one of the first 2 films, perhaps both of the first 2 films there. But the idea here is that after Marybeth puts him down at the beginning of the film, we get a nice break where she goes back into town, is trying to convince the authorities of what's going on, and we really start building more of the mythos that 2 gave us about where Victor comes from, why he is the way he is, which I really did like, because it shows that, again, Adam Green succeeded with the first film in just making this hilarious but yet still awesome send-up of our old slasher films, and now he's finally getting to expand on that story and actually like add way more to the characters like Marybeth and even more to Victor Crowley himself too. And I thought that's a really good turn, because we know we're going to get to plenty of killing. We're not too focused on anything but getting to the killing, so it's nice to get a little bit of story to back everything else up in the meantime. And not only that, but it immediately gives us another all-star cast of horror legends in this one as well too. Caroline Williams, who you might know from Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. That's right, the return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yes, that's the one with Dennis Hopper. And it's arguably the best in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. She comes in as Amanda Fowler, the local resident expert on all things Victor Crowley, trying to get some answers on what happened to Marybeth and her friends and all the other various people who have been killed in that swamp. We also get Zach Galligan, who you might recognize from Gremlins and Gremlins 2. That's right, he played Billy in Gremlins and Gremlins 2 here as Sheriff Lewis Fowler. Kind of the antithesis to our hero Marybeth Dunstan, because again, somebody's got to put her up in a situation she doesn't want to be in there. But not only that, we also get Sean Whalen from People Under the Stairs, amongst a lot of other great films that y'all have seen in your life. And we get Sid Haig from House of Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects. We also get Derek Mears, which in a truly meta moment, we get Jason versus Jason, because if you don't know, Derek Mears actually portrayed Jason in the Friday the 13th remake that came out in 2009, if I'm correct. And as we all know, Kane Hodder is the most famous Jason there is, portraying Jason 4 times between Jason, what is it? Not Jason Lives. Oh Lord, how did I forget that? Yeah, it's Jason Lives, and then after Jason Lives, it's The New Blood. That's right. The New Blood, Jason Takes Manhattan, Jason Goes to Hell, and Jason X. Yeah, so it's the most famous Jason versus the most recent Jason. So again, we have an all-star cast of horror greats in this film, which is something that Adam Green continuously seems to be able to do, and I love that. I love the fact that he's gotten all these people who have been in all these other great horror films to join up with this one, because I get it. After watching the first movie, which really is fantastic, by the way, but after watching the first film, if you've been in this genre, maybe if you're taking it a bit too seriously, it's easy to look at that first one and be like, I'm not coming to do any of these movies. It's making fun of my life's work and the things that I've made famous in my lifetime. But it seems that he's got all these people just lining up to do these movies, and I think that's fantastic because it shows how big of a horror family is truly out there. Now, the story here seems very, very reminiscent of another horror franchise sequel that came out a few years prior to this one with much less success, and I'm talking The Descent Part 2. Now, I mentioned that in my review either for Hatchet or Hatchet 2, but I mentioned the idea that when our protagonist in a sequel ends up having to return, especially in a horror franchise, but they have to return and they're forced back into the same exact situation that they were before, there has to be good reasoning behind it. There's a reason why most horror franchises don't carry the same protagonist through, and that's because in truth it just doesn't make sense. I know we're talking about a genre that has vampires and werewolves and witches and all these things out there that are just completely over the top, but we focus on the fact that what might be the most over the top is that the person who has been hunted down by a serial killer or a monster, has seen friends and family die, would come back into that exact same situation again knowingly. It doesn't make sense. One of the best portrayals, I thought, there for a series that's very but it still gets my point across, is the I Know What You Did Last Summer series. So Jennifer Love Hewitt's character, Julie James? I think it's Julie James. She goes through an entire ordeal in that first movie, okay? Her and her friends accidentally run over the killer of the first film, and who had just got done killing somebody else, and then that killer begins to torment her and all of her friends. He kills 2 of her friends. Actually 3, because Johnny Galecki gets killed in that. Kills 3 of her friends, and basically terrorizes her and gives her extreme PTSD. And the sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, not a great movie, but it actually shows that PTSD, which we don't get to see a lot in horror films, that Julie is damaged by what happened with Ben Willis. I think it's Ben Willis. He has the name of the killer in the first film. And so she's not going to go anywhere at all that puts her in danger, but yet and still the danger still comes to her when she's tricked into showing up on an island that the killer has orchestrated her to be there along with his son, and he's going to take her and her friends out. And I love that portrayal because it's realistic to put the protagonist back in that situation. But like The Descent Part 2, if you've ever seen that, our lead character, Sarah, who, again, watched all her friends get murdered by these cave monsters in the original Descent, an amazing fucking movie. In the second film, the whole idea behind it is that Sarah is the one being blamed for the disappearance of all her friends. So the local sheriff decides he's going to force Sarah back down into that cave again to try to get some answers onto what happened. Now, I am not a police officer, and you guys kind of know my thoughts and feelings on law enforcement these days, but without knowing much, I can definitively say that I don't don't think that police would be able to force a suspect back down to the place where these atrocities were committed, especially if they're expressing that there could be danger in these caves as well too. So that didn't really make a lot of sense. And Hatchet 3 kind of takes the same idea that the local sheriff is going to force Marybeth back to this swamp to prove her story, that Victor Crowley is alive and committing all these murders and that she didn't do it. Now, it's kind of twofold because she's not going to go back in there. The sheriff decides to go take a bunch of cops, SWAT team with them and everything. So she's not going there at all. And the only reason that Marybeth gets forced into going back there is because she's eventually promised by the local town crazy Amanda Fowler, who's also a journalist as well. But she's the expert on Victor Crowley. But she convinces Marybeth that they have to go back as a way to finally kill Victor Crowley for good and save everybody else. And I love that reasoning behind it. I love the way that they get her back in there while everything's going down. What even works more hilariously in the film is the feud between Derek Mears' SWAT team captain and then like the rest of the police, because basically when they get there, it's made very clearly that, look, this little girl didn't murder anybody at all, and Derek Mears' character knows that, but clearly he is looking for a fight because numerous times characters mention calling in state police and the National Guard and anybody that can help, because clearly nobody's had luck taking down Victor Crowley in the 2 movies prior. But this SWAT commander is so gung-ho about not losing his job and ending it himself that he unfortunately ends up on the bad side of Victor Crowley, like so many others do as well. And it's so good. It's so good. Again, the absurdity of the kills and the bloods and the guts and the gore is just ramped up so high in Hatchet 3, and somehow he just keeps doing it. And I love that, the fact that at least across these 3 films so far, Adam Green has not traded quality for I guess quantity, like if that's the comparison there, like making it bigger, maybe having a little bit more of a budget. He still didn't trade the quality that he took from his original 2 films, which is great because it really does make all of these films really enjoyable to watch, which again is so rare for a horror franchise. There's always going to be a downer in the series, and thus far, out of the 3 of the 4 films, we haven't had a downer. All 3 have been such fun to watch them all. So you're definitely going to want to check this one out, because guess what, y'all? Hatchet 3 is also free to stream right now on Vudu. So if you got Vudu, even if you don't, you can sign up for it for free. You can go watch Hatchet 3 right now with ads on it, completely for free. So you gotta check this one out for certain. And feel bad because I didn't do my service to Hatchet 2, because as much as I love that movie, one thing that, if you know me, I've been talking about for years is the biscuits and the gravy and the chicken and the biscuits and the gravy, and the biscuit is me. Love it. Love that song so much. One of the best parts about that movie. But yeah, I'm really loving going through the Hatchet series, honestly. If you're in the mood for a lot of kills, for a lot of blood, for a lot of gore, for some violent deaths, to see some of your favorite horror actors come back into the same franchise, and to see some face-offs that we probably would have never seen in any other franchise, this is really what you got to check out. Adam Green did a phenomenal job with this series, and I'm excited to wrap this up with Victor Crowley. So make sure you come back to check out my review of Victor Crowley, folks. I appreciate you checking out this video, whether it was a review, whether it was a new episode, whether it was an unboxing, an interview, or whatever else. I want to remind you, you can check out my separate reviews also on my YouTube page, and new full episodes go up every Wednesday night on YouTube at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, and on your favorite podcasting platforms at 8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like and share. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.